I'm actually a civil engineer from IIT Madras. Uh, I had a couple of years of work as soon as I graduated in civil engineering. I still remember I was one of the very few in my batch of civil engineering who pursued civil engineering after graduation, because that was kind of the IT boom and everybody was like taking their careers in IT. I took a break to support my family and kids, and in my second innings, I started in civil engineering, but I switched to IT. Today, I have about 15 years in IT. I'm currently the CEO of Unimity Solutions, a recognized leader in an open source solution called Drupal. Very, very passionate about open source, delivering enterprise grade solutions, nurturing young talent. I had the opportunity to be on the international board of the open source platform Drupal. I also founded Drupal India Association, inspired by my board tenure. Drupal India Association is a conglomerate of companies in open source, and we are working to, as an industry body, try to pursue training, empowerment, mentoring across India in this open source tool. Participated in many national, international conferences, keynotes, very passionately mentor youngsters and women in STEM. I got the opportunity to be the secretary, elected as the secretary of IIT Madras Alumni Association, and also engage in bringing the alumni community together. I think one of my biggest strengths is like balancing all these multiple roles, both professional and personal, being a daughter, wife, sister, mother, CEO. Sometimes this list just keeps growing, and amazing how to see each of these roles feed the other. Come from a very traditional background, big believer in Hindu culture and traditions. That's kind of like a quick summary of who I am. I was brought up in a very large joint family with a very traditional background in Chennai. And I think many of my life lessons, especially handling different perspectives, came from being in a large family. And, I really attribute a lot of my people handling skills to that. As such, as a kid, I had a very, very encouraging environment. There is nothing I had to complain about. Both my mom and dad gave me all the freedom, right from schooling to my decision to choose engineering as a career. But I must call out that, going for JEE or writing those entrance exams at that time needed you to attend a lot of coaching classes, right? And women traveling in early hours and late nights. I had a whole huge bunch of friends who really helped me. And so it's kind of always been in my life. Both family and friends have been my source of energy and cheer. And in many ways, it's these cheerleaders that really influence and pave way to a successful, bright future. My MD, J. Krishnan, I think it's been an amazing journey for me just working with him. The biggest lesson that I've learned is about how making a workplace where most of us spend, I think, a large chunk of our time to be like a home away from home, to give an empathetic environment, right, to people, allowing people to discover their potential, and a place where you can make mistakes and learn. So he's been kind of one big influencer in my life. And I would say my husband is next, because in this act of constantly balancing multiple roles, especially in my early journey of my career, I did have a lot of struggle with young kids, and starting my journey in IT, lots of things to learn. There was constantly demand in every side. The best advice I got was from my husband, and he always constantly told me that I'm not alone trying to do this, right? And he constantly pushed me to find my own answers. I believe that that's really important, that we have people who encourage us and support us, especially in times which are tough. Uh, Another person I would really attribute to a lot of my courage is Sandhya Auntie, who's a co-founder of Aarti Home, which is a home for girls and women in Kadapa. Her courage, her vision to convert, her courage to convert her ideas to action always inspired me. And I'm proud today that I'm associated as a board member of Aarti Home and I work with her. She's a constant source of inspiration. So, I mean, I just want to add, like, especially when you talk about influencers in your life and in your career, what I've also learned is that, influencers need not necessarily be in high places, right? There are people in your day to day lives who are very entrepreneurial and who you can look to and learn so many things. Like, in fact, the vegetable vendor in my street or my servant, they provide a lot of real life lessons. Like my vegetable vendor, for instance, she just doesn't deliver vegetables. She, in fact, peels the peas, bananas, and sometimes even chops the vegetables. The nature in which she provides these differential services to her customers is something I really look up to. And even my servant, his attitude to not get defeated by his personal problems and constantly look at what's next, right? And the pride with which he does his work and makes himself indispensable for everyone he serves. So when it comes to influencers, I think we should go beyond our professional and personal lives and see at things. I mean, there are so many of them around us we can look to get inspired. This is again for one of our large customers at that time, Deccan Chronicle. They were looking at um, about 15 years back, looking at going online with publishing. And at that time, publishing online was still very, very nascent. And we had to build a platform for them and the editorial team. We said we should not reinvent the wheel or start something from scratch. If there is a tool that's already available, why not use it? And that's how we started our open source journey. And what I figured as we started this journey, I was soon not just consuming the open source tool. I could fully harness this tool only when I started to contribute back, right? Because you then become not just a user of the tool, but also a contributor, and you have a chance to define the path that that particular software chooses to be. There is an innate give back in the way open source works, which is very, very close to our culture as Indians. And it really resonated with me. So it kind of very closely tied in with my journey and my passion. And also, there are many ways in which you can contribute to open source, especially in IT. You could write code, you could, be part of a project management team. But I think businesses to think open source, right, is probably the most powerful idea. And that's what inspired me to start a pan-India open source community, Drupal India Association, where we as businesses come together, strategize, and do things. Because many of these pro bono activities or open source activities need to be funded and powered by not just pro bono free time, but by money and visionaries of the business. One of the things that sometimes businesses feel scared is that when you use open source software, the code that you are running in your corporate is actually publicly available, right? and there is a fear that this could lead to security hazards. So a big role that businesses can play is educating enterprises that open source is secure. Open source means quality code. It also means that at not all points of time, especially today, right, with all this IT boom and shortage of resources, it's very difficult for every organization to get the best of people within their teams to build out tools. But when they decide, right, that they are building a solution and they are able to open source not just the idea, but also the code that delivers that idea, what happens is not just that they give back the code, they get back much more, because there will be a bunch of people who will start using that same code and evaluating and giving feedback, which you could not as a business do with the small teams that you have in house, or the capability of your teams will still be limiting to who are there, right? Whereas when you throw it open, you get the value of a much larger community. And you're very right in terms of aligning with sustainability. I think reusable, anything that is reusable, right, is a mechanism to start with sustainable ideas. And if you look at, I think one of the other things is that there is so many trends and so many ideas. It's very difficult for every organization to have to follow these trends and ideas to make a sustainable code, right? Whereas when you go open source, you have the best minds coming together, thinking about these ideas, and in one shot, you get these reusable components. And I think right from the fundamentals of how the tool I work on, Drupal, provides answers. Performance is one of the most important aspects. How does your code perform, right? That's again another dimension of sustainability, because the more performant your code is, the less resources it uses, right? So those are kind of dimensions in IT where sustainability can really um, which you need to keep in mind to make sure you're doing like a sustainable IT solution, I would say. And businesses powering these open sources means that you're not just getting value out of it. I mean, not just giving back to the community, but deriving a value out of those open sources. And when we businesses come together, we are able to educate enterprises to understand these concepts. Earlier in my career, being a mom and being a dog, I not only come from a large family, I also got married into a large family. We stay in a joint family. Um, I live with my in-laws. And in early stages of my career, I don't think it was easy for me to manage many of these multiple roles. It used to be, I think, the challenge used to be the physical exhaustion. Having like a full day work, coming back and attending to your children, and then you have your in-laws, you're running a, all these different threads that are running in your mind. I think I used to have a lot of times where I really broke down. For me, I think the way I got out of those failures were that I had like the really good family, as well as even at work, we could express and share some of our concerns. Once you talk out your stress, right, then that itself becomes like your problem is half solved. And it then gives you the answers to really bounce back and find answers rather than sit and cry. So that's kind of, when I think of my challenges, I would say this was one of the challenges that I constantly face at my early stages. I don't know, I mean, I did think about this, Elsa, because you shared these questions, right? And I think of failures. One of the things that I learned very early in my life is to convert your failures into lessons, right? Make them into learnings. So the word failure itself is a very powerful word, and Uh, Somehow I've been very fortunate to not let that be part of my life. Look at it maybe as a challenging situation rather than a failure, because there is so much opportunity. There's so much avenues for you to undo every stage in every step in your life, that uh, looking ahead rather than looking at them as failures is something that I've really learned consciously, and I really enjoy uh, doing. Like I said, I'm very fortunate with my MD and my boss that we had a very inclusive environment. So at work, we didn't really have to face some of these challenges. Uh, but yeah, right early in my days, I don't think anybody visualized me to become an engineer right in my family. Um, they didn't. They encouraged me, but they didn't say, like, you could choose STEM, or there wasn't so much direction. Uh, it was a lot that I figured by myself. Um, and when we joined IIT, it was kind of very weird for many people, because, like, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but we were one of the biggest batches of girls at IIT Madras uh, in a long time. We were 20 of us, and 5 of us were in civil engineering. That itself was like a unheard of aspect, that two women choose civil engineering. Can they actually do civil engineering? So these were kind of stereotypes that did exist. But fortunately for me, even in IIT, because we were a very big batch, right? We could look up to each other and cheer each other, that it never let us bogged down by any of the stereotypes that existed, or any of the questioning that came. We could just bang on, take it on, and face it. So actually, when you write JE, right, Elsa, you don't really necessarily get to choose your subjects, right? Because it's extremely competitive. There are a very few bunch that get selected to be at IIT, and then you have a choice to choose your institute and your subjects. I was pretty keen to be in, coming from Chennai, I chose IIT Madras as my first option. I wasn't too, what I mean to say is that it's not like a conscious choice to take civil engineering. It didn't matter for me any which form of engineering I choose. And I think it is the all round exposure that you get in science and technology from being in an engineering school that matters, not so much so the subject. And I am still very glad I chose IIT Madras, because it has one of the best facilities. In fact, in civil engineering, it's one of the very best facilities. It gave you the right, I think, exposure to different aspects, both hand-on and in terms of labs and resources that were needed to make you understand engineering from the grassroots level. So choosing civil engineering wasn't uh, something by choice. It happened to me because of the options that were in front of me, and I just think I made the best of it, and yeah, enjoyed it. This is a very good question, because that's what finally keeps you going, right? It's not just about doing it once, right? You want to also not just do it once, but leave behind something for the future. And to me, being a women leader itself allows me to influence and inspire other women in the organization. That's kind of very, very fundamental, that I really consciously use my leadership position to inspire others in my organization, and also not just limiting to my family and work. I pursue opportunities outside of these two areas as well, engage with the society at large, uh, In this specifically, my work with the open source software, I think helps me to give a dimension where I am in an industry wide organization where I represent the women and I uh, bring that perspective there as well. I also actively use my alumni community. We are one of the largest alumni. And this again gives me an opportunity to, with the alumni uh, association, we work on three dimensions. We work on community building, which is bringing the alumni together. The second is we work on societal impact projects. And here we want to pave the way forward for more women in STEM. This is kind of the goal that we have set out to. And there is when you pave the way forward, when you join hands and do, there's more power. And definitely, the Alumni Association gives that particular edge. Uh, of course, the last one is the dimension I already spoke about, where I'm the board member of Aarti Home, which was founded by my friend's mother, which is a women empowerment organization, and which supports women empowerment, support girl education, women and girl well-being. Especially after the COVID, there is a lot of specific need for women who are trying to figure out answers and careers. So this dimension again helps me to uh, use all my learnings and share and care. Also, my business acumen, right? Sometimes that's the area which is most needed for the nonprofit, to have somebody in the board who comes with the understanding of being in open source, having run business. How do we not just strategize, but how do we implement those ideas, and how do we make those ideas long lasting and sustainable? I think for many of us, COVID has taught us to be very minimalistic. You figured that you could just stay with the same two clothes, right? Just have to attend the video calls. Maybe you can just wear a dupatta and still do the calls. I try to shop locally. I buy my vegetables with, just walk down and buy them in reusable bags. I have a small terrace garden. I must say that, one of the most sustainable things that I do in my personal life is that we have stayed in this old house, which is 60-year-old. We did not demolish it. We only continue to renovate it maybe a couple of times. And I think that's a very big uh, step, because we got the best of both worlds, right? I mean, we got a very traditional house with a lovely garden around. We have a lot of, including banana plant and everything that you could visualize, right, in our compound. Um, so for me, my sustainability doesn't end with my personal side. Like constantly, even in the official side, it's important that you're watching out for these, because this is what you leave for the future. Uh, we have learned in COVID to work remotely, and I think that's going to remain. We don't have to necessarily travel or be in office unless necessary. Maybe more from a mental connect perspective is what we would need to get to office. It's going to be a hybrid mode. We constantly, even before COVID, we did believe in a lot of recycle and reuse, especially with IT industry, right? With all the machinery and hardware and computers. There were times that we would still retain the computer box and fit in new. Uh, there were times where you'll remove those parts and reuse it somewhere else. So we used to spend a lot of time. At that time, I don't think the word sustainability was coined, but I think that's again something else, which is very ingrained in our culture, right? When you look at it from our home, starting from the plate that you eat, you can eat in a banana leaf, right? And after you eat and you leave, you go and put it into your into a ditch where you build manure in your garden. So, I mean, I think culturally we are very inclined, and many of these aspects also got into how we deliver in our corporate aspect in terms of how we recycle hardware, machinery. And like I said, like being an open source itself, the way we are able to reuse and share and collaborate is again another very big sustainable practice when it comes to our official dimension. Yeah, that's something I'm a I read a lot, and I'm a big fan of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. So I'd like to I constantly say this to myself and to everybody else is that dream, dream, dream. Dreams transform into thoughts, and thoughts result in action. I think once you figure out the route to convert your dream to an action, right, you're on a road to success. And we should constantly remember that this journey of success is our own, right? We are not trying to prove this to anybody else. This would be like the most important thing that I tell myself and every girl that I meet, that if you have the power to dream and you can transform those to thoughts and then action, and then there you have a formula for yourself and you've set a road to success. I think the other important advice that I have constantly followed is, and also would give, is the importance of values, right? It's very important to realize how important it is to have your values in place. It gives you a peace of mind to wake up fearlessly and start your day with confidence. And any challenging situation, make sure you surround yourself with people who will encourage you, give you a hearing, and that itself will then give you the confidence to find your own answers. My self-care routine, I start with a very early day. I do a little bit of reading in the morning. The first thing that I do is to read. I read a lot of inspirational books, also sometimes novels. I start my day with a little bit of reading, a little bit of meditation. Most of my days, I do a little bit of walking in the morning itself, if not later in the evening. And my self-care, actually, my family is a big part of my self-care. Spending time with my family really energizes me, be it my in-laws or my parents. They both stay close by. My kids are now grown up, so they are pretty much on their own. So spending time with my family is part of, like, I would say, self-care, because it allows you to feel a little bit hugged and cherished and happy.